Good afternoon, everyone. This is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. Welcome to my afternoon tea time on a card. Let me just straighten out my camera just a little bit here. So welcome to episode number 36. I'm so glad you guys are here. I have my tea here with me, but you know what happens when you stamp and you have a drink nearby. I'm going to actually take my tea and move it way over there. I tend to be clumsy sometimes. I don't want to make a mess. So for those of you watching later on YouTube, Afternoon Tea Time and a Card takes place on my Stamp and Ink Designs Facebook group. You can find me on Facebook. I do weekly classes, and then once a month I also do Stamp with Me. Now I have to tell you guys, when I posted the reminder today, I actually dug out my projects for Stamp With Me. I almost messed up, and then I realized what I had done wrong. So today I am featuring the jar of flowers along with the jar punch. I have 3 cards to show you today. The first one is a simple one, and then I jump into a card fold, and then I jump into the little, let me dig them out, our little mason jar shaker domes. I'm going to show you how to do a shaker card on the 3rd card. So let's get started with card number 1. Let me bring in everything I need. I'm also using the classic label punch. Now I am using the sentiment, the same sentiment on all 3 cards. Time to celebrate. And no, your eyes are not crooked. Look, I got my label on my stamp. Look how bad that is. It actually sticks out over the top. I didn't line that up very well. So when that happens, I actually line up using the rubber on the bottom. If you try to peel these off, you're gonna rip the foam off. So I have to leave it on there, and it's driving me crazy that it's crooked, but I don't have a choice. So that sentiment comes from the Hooray with To You stamp set. Now, let me bring in my cardstock pieces. The designer paper that I'm using today, you're going to see little strips on some cards, bigger pieces on the other cards. Flowers for every season. And what I love, I should have brought the whole package out, but there's even poinsettia flowers on one of the sheets. These are all 6x6, and there's different flowers for just about everything. Now, where's my card? I just moved it. Here it is. Okay, here's card number 1. You can see that I'm going to use the jar image going all the way across at different heights so that I can add my flower. And the card is actually a little bit shorter on the front. The designer paper is actually glued on the inside. So I have 2 strips of designer paper. This one is 5.5 by 3/4 of an inch. And then 5.5 by 1/2 inch. And my card, I'm using the thick Whisper White, measures 7.5 by 5.5, and I scored it at 3.25. If you don't like that measurement, you can flip it around this way and score it at 4.25. So either way works. So I'm going to go ahead and fold that on the score line. So again, it makes like a flap on the front. Now I'm going to bring in a scrap piece of paper, and then I'm using the Mango Melody for the little sentiment that I'm going to add later. Now for inks, I'm using Soft Suede and Just Jade. I'm going to start out with the Soft Suede. Now when I tried this the first time, and yes, I do mess up once in a while, I did my jars all the way across, and then my flower was too tall up here. So I'm going to do the flower first so I'll know what height to put the jar. And that'll also give it time to dry, the ink to dry, so I can color with my blend markers. Now, when I did this one, you can see the image, it's a little flatter right here. So I chose to turn it that way so that it'll fit over the jars. So let me go ahead and ink that up. And I'm going to put that. So again, this is the part that I want that's going to fit on my jar. So I need to make sure that's nice and straight. Now my ink's going to show up a little bit darker because I re-inked my ink pad. Look at the difference in the shading. Okay, now I'm going to bring the jade, just jade. We're going to do the jars. Let's see how straight we can get these. So there's my number 1 jar. I'm going to make the next one a little bit taller. I inked up all of my ink pads, so the ink is a lot darker on everything. We're going to make this one really short. Okay, there's my 4 jars. Now we have this little jar that kind of fills in the little ring around the jar. So I'm going to stamp that on my second one. So there's my little ring. I'm going to bring in my blender pen and I'm going to color with the ink lines just to keep that nice and soft. So I'm just using a blending pen. And you can see that adds just a little, it makes it look like water, and you can still see through it by doing it that way. Now, look how easy that was. Let me see, I'm going to put this ink away. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment just so I can cut it out. And then put my ink pad away. So time to celebrate. Cut that out with the classic label punch. And let's see, I don't think I need this ink anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and put that away completely. Now, you know, most of the time we color, when we use our blends markers, we color with Memento ink. If you let your ink dry enough and you color quickly, it won't smudge. So this is the light Flirty Flamingo. And what I usually do is I tap instead of rub. That way the ink lines won't smudge. Okay, there's my Flirty Flamingo. Next is the Mango Melody, and this is the dark. Now I am just going to go like this. I'm going to drag. I'm just going to drag quickly. I'm going to leave some white spots. I'll bring it up to the camera so you can see that I did leave some white spots in there. There's nothing wrong with that. It just gives it dimension when you do that. So it's just a quick way to color, and I'm not smudging the ink. So look how quick that is. So there's 3 sunflowers. Okay, those are done. Wait a minute, I got a couple petals right here I didn't get. Next up is the, let me see, the dark soft sea foam. And again, I'm just going to tap. We don't want to smudge that ink. I almost want to say happy trees like Bob Ross. You know the artist Bob Ross? We're making some happy branches instead of happy trees and happy leaves. Okay, there's that. Look how quick this colors. And last is the soft suede. This is the light. I'm just quickly adding color. Again, I'm leaving white space because I'm tapping. And that's it. Look how quick I colored that. Now we're going to go ahead and add the designer paper on the bottom. And that's going to be even with the edge. I'm going to add the other piece, which is this 1/2 inch wide. It's stuck to my finger. And I'm just going to overlap that just a tiny bit over the first one. And then it peeks through. And lastly, we're going to use the mini dimensionals. And we're going to add a couple on the sentiment. I just can't believe how much darker my ink is just because I inked my ink pad. Very important when you guys, when you order an ink pad, make sure you order the refill to go with it, because you do need to ink your pads quite often. Okay, there's card number 1. Look how easy and cute that is. And I will draw a name at the end of, probably tomorrow morning for all 3 cards. So you know what you need to do. Okay, here comes card number 2. And this time I'm using the large flower image. And I have a lot of layers on this one. I'm using Misty Moonlight and Cinnamon Cider Ink. And again, we're going to use the same sentiments. I'm going to go ahead and clean it. Now, the little tiny scalloped rectangle that you see here, that's just jade cardstock. And I use the Stitch So Sweetly dies. Look at all the different sizes of the scalloped rectangles. I use these quite a bit. You can see here I have a couple of the big ones already cut out. This is one of my favorite sets of Stitch dies. I love this set. Okay. So just jade, 11 by 4 1/4. I need to bring my ruler out. We're going to have 2 layers of the designer paper. Now all I did was use one pattern and then I flipped it over. Both measure 2.5 by 4. We have another piece of just jade, 2.5 by 3 3/4. Misty Moonlight, 2 3/4 by 4. Whisper White, lots of layers on this one, 2 1/4 by 3.5. A scrap piece of white for stamping. And because I'm doing a card fold this time, I do have a piece for the inside that measures, oh, that looks too long. I gotta check that out. It's supposed to be 4. See, I could tell this was too long. 4 by 5 1/4. I think I just forget to cut it. Okay, so 4 by 5 1/4. Now what I did with this, instead of scoring in the middle, I scored on each end at 2 3/4 of an inch. I'm gonna fold this both towards the inside. So we've got a gate fold. I'm gonna show you the card after I press on my score lines. And this is card number 2, and you'll see that the panel has a lot of layers, and actually it's glued to the top section only. And then this comes down this way. So let's go ahead and glue the white on the inside. So this is a vertical gate fold. Okay, there's my inside. Now we're going to add the 2 designer papers. So pretty neat that you just need one piece, cut it in half, and then flip it over. I love the flower images on this one. So that's how I tried to replicate. You can see here when I did my flower, I tried to replicate the colors in it. I'm going to show you how I did that. So I'm going to put the green, the Just Jade panel on the top. And then the one with the flowers on the bottom. And then we have our Misty Moonlight layer. Remember, we're just gluing at the top, so we're going to add adhesive. I'm going to add a couple rows only on half. And then we're going to center that. The next layer is Just Jade. This one we can add glue to the whole thing. Yeah, so I almost ruined our Stamp With Me class that's coming up later this month by almost doing that today. Okay, this is the panel that goes over here on the front. Let me bring in my jar image. I'm actually going to do something different on this one, if I can find. Okay, I'm going to explain as I go. I'm going to use Misty Moonlight. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the jar image. When I made these cards a couple weeks ago, I did not have a certain tool. I'm going to do it with a certain tool today just to be different. This is going to go right on the bottom. Now, normally what I would have done here is used my blender pen to color with the ink lines to get that light shading. But I want to show you something different because we have new tools coming in January. We have our little brushes coming in January. And look, I haven't used this one yet. So I thought instead of coloring with a blender pen, I would sponge the color on. If you guys have never used brushes like these, this isn't foam, this isn't a sponge, it's actual bristles. You can see as I move, there's thousands of bristles, and I love the way that this colors. Now, what I've done here, I'm going to use a Post-it note. I just happened to put it on a scrap piece of cardstock because it's hard to cut through a Post-it note with a punch. I'm going to, the sticky part is right down here. I'm just going to cut. And then I'm going to use the Post-it note. Let me get my scrap paper. I'm actually going to put my Post-it note right over my little jar. And then I'm going to just tap. And I always try it out first to see how much ink I have on there because I want this to be light. And I'm just going to sponge the color on this time instead of using a blender pen. Now I think I'm going to make it darker at the bottom and then just work my way up. Look how nice this colors, you guys. I just love these. And what I started doing with mine, I started labeling them. I know you can rinse these and use different ink colors, but I want my brushes to just have one color. I don't want to have to bother with cleaning and rinsing. So I started adding labels. I have a few here that I've already used. You can see the pretty colors, and I've labeled all of them. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the Post-it note. Look how easy that was to color. And I love that I could make it darker at the bottom like that. Okay, let's move on. Now this is going to be glued in place with dimensionals. And then I'm going to show you a little technique that I used. No, scratch that. The technique is on the next card. Whoops. So this is going to go to the card front. Now we're going to do the flower. And I'm using cinnamon cider because, again, I'm trying to replicate the flower that's in the designer paper. Now, wait a minute. Let me do the sentiment so I can put the Misty Moonlight ink away. Now, again, because my little sticker is so crooked, I'm going to use the bottom of my rubber stamp to hopefully line that up straight. Nope. Let's do that again. Okay, and that one I just glued on flat. So that's going to go right over my jar. So now we're going to go ahead and do the flower. And I did use a blender pen, and I used Just Jade and cinnamon cider. Let's see, where's my flower stamp? Right here. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the flower image. And you can see here I just added just a little bit by starting in the center. And I'm working around just the edges of each petal. I'm just adding a little bit of color. Because you can see in the designer paper, it's mostly white. Okay, look how quickly I did that. And you can see there's a lot of white space, just a little bit of cinnamon cider. Now I'm going to go ahead, clean my blender pen, and I want to add some Just Jade. I'm just going to use the ink from my lid, and I'm just adding just a little bit. Oh, thank you for the hearts, everyone. I'm glad you like this. Look, that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Now, through the magic of doing videos, I didn't want you to have to watch me hand cut this. So I already did one ahead of time. So it's all cut out. It does take a little bit of time to go around all the little pieces there. And then I'm just going to glue that in place right over my jar. And there's the gatefold card number 2. How cute. Okay, now let's move on to card number 3. So again, I'm not going to clean this off. I'm going to leave the ink right on there. I mean, you guys can, if you want to clean these off, that's fine. You get 3 in a set. I mean, I would do this to get most of it off before I put it away. But I did hear that most people rinse them under the faucet to get the color off, and then you can use another color with it. I'm just not going to do that. Okay, for card number 3, we're going to use the mason jar shaker domes. I keep them in a clear case. It's just easier to find them. Look at the pretty color I'm using. I'm also going to be using the sequins for everything because we're making a little shaker card, and those come in 4 pretty colors, and they're all nice and sparkly. And for ink, hold on, I gotta check. I'm using Versamark. I'm using Misty Moonlight, Mint Macaron, and the Magenta Madness. Is this the dark? This is the light marker. And here is my little card. You can see the little shakers are inside the little jar. And what I'm going to show you today for a technique on this card, this is all embossed. I'm going to see if I can get it to shine for you. It's clear embossed, but I made my own embossing color. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Okay, so let me dig out what I need. So we've got Magenta Madness, 11 by 4 1/4, scored at 5.5. Oh, you guys love this card too. I'm so glad to see that. Here is another piece of the same paper pack, the Flowers for Every Season. This measures 3.5 by 4 3/4. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that to the center. This is a really easy card, you guys. Make sure it's not upside down. And that's going to go right in the middle of my card base. Next, I use the same dies. Let me see if I can tell you which one I use. I think it's the largest one. Yep, I use the largest square, the rectangle, the scalloped rectangle. But as you notice, I have some color peeking through from where I'm going to punch the hole. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to punch the hole. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the scalloped rectangle is centered. And I want to go quite a bit on the bottom only because we have flowers to put on top, so we need some room. We can use this on another card. Okay, next, we're going to take our little mason jar, and the thing with this is they have adhesive on both sides, so we're going to peel off this first layer, maybe, if I can get it to go. And then this fits right over the top. We're going to press down, make sure it's glued in place. Now we're going to flip it over. And we're going to add some of these little colorful little sequins. So I'm going to go with some yellow. They do stick to your fingers. I'm going to go with some green. And because we have the magenta, I'm going to put a little bit of the pink stuff. And we might as well add some gold. So I've got all 4 colors in here. Now, before I move on, I'm going to cover this so I don't spill it. So all of our little shakers are inside. Now we're going to remove the remainder of the strip. We want the blue to be facing down so it peeks through. So we're just going to press that in place. And there's our little shaker. Look how easy that was. Very easy. Now the next step, I'm going to glue that to the card front. If I can find, let me grab another sheet of dimensionals. So we're going to glue this to the card front. So this is a very easy way to do a shaker card. I did one not too long ago using sunflower seeds. That was really neat too. Now this is going to go right in the center, and you can see that the blue is peeking through. I'm going to go ahead and add the bow, and this is with the Magenta Madness in color ribbon. I'm just going to use a glue dot. Now glue dots stick really well to this plastic dome. We're going to put that right there. And then I'm going to show you the little trick with making your own embossing. Okay, so there's my white. We're going to bring in a little old dryer sheet just to take off the static. I'm just going to rub that on the white. Then I'm going to use Versamark ink. Now I just got to find my I'm going to find my sunflower image. What did I do with it? Did I? Yeah, I had that one out already because I used it on the first card. Oh, I see it. It was hiding on me. I just need to clean it. Now, when you want to do embossing and you don't have a certain color, because we don't sell a lot of colored embossing with Stampin' Up, you can make your own, any color you want. Now, it's just, you know what, it's just jade that I need also. I'm going to use the mint to color, but I need the just jade to do my embossing. We're also going to use clear embossing powder. So the trick to making your own embossed color is to use Versamark ink first. I'm going to make sure this is nice and really inked well. Versamark ink does not dry fast. So what you do, you follow that with a colored ink. So I use the Just Jade. And you can't see, but it's nice and shiny. It's still wet. So now I'm able to add my powder. And again, I'm going to cover this so that the powder doesn't go flying. And I'm just going to make noise for a little bit while I heat this up with my heat tool. So you can see it's got a white powder over it right now. It's going to heat and melt to a very shiny, clear color. There you go. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's starting to melt. It's getting darker. And like I said, you can do this with any color because the Versamark keeps the color wet. Okay, now let's see if I can get that to shine for you. I don't know if I'm going to be, but it's nice and clear and shiny, but it's got the color underneath. That's a nice little trick. Okay, now we've got Misty Moonlight. I just need to squeeze this to get some ink. And because this is embossed, we don't need to worry about smudging because it's clear embossed. The ink, it will not smudge. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with my first sunflower. I'm just going to add strokes, and I'm going to keep some of the white in the cardstock. Okay, see how easy I colored that? Who says sunflowers can't be blue? I actually had, Dave and I planted the variegated colored sunflower seeds this year. We had some like a blackberry bliss color. we had a white color. They were so pretty. Okay, there's my sunflowers. Now I'm going to bring in the mint macaron to color the leaves. Quickly, I'm just quickly tapping the color on. How easy, how much easier can this get? Okay, there's the mint. I decided I wanted a bright color for my flowers, so I'm using the magenta. Look how nice and bright that is. And then lastly, we've got the cinnamon cider. Whoops, I need to open that up. Cinnamon cider for my centers. And the embossing, if you've never worked with embossing before, the embossing is rock hard, so it resists the color. So you can't smudge it, you can't ruin it. And then again, through the magic of doing videos, I've got one all done up. Because again, there's no dies with this set. So you need to hand cut. So I've already gone ahead and hand cut this one. And I'm going to finish that off by gluing it down with dimensionals. And again, I'm using the flatter part where the flowers are to butt that up against the jar. And then we're going to use Misty Moonlight to do the sentiment. And where is my classic label punch? So look how quickly these cards came together. So I had a clean and simple, I had a card fold, and then this little technique that I just showed you. We're going to put mini dimensionals on this one. And I'm just going to stick that right there. So there's card number 3. So I just love that you can do these as shaker cards. And like I said, I did one with sunflower seeds, and it was so neat to see the sunflower seeds inside. So let me bring all 3 cards back in. So this is the technique is creating your own colored embossing. This is the vertical gate fold. And then my third one was the nice, clean, and simple card. So I hope you guys like all my cards for today. And I have some really neat cards. I'm trying to remember, I think for next week. I think it's going to be, oh, it's a gift card holder. I'm going to show you a neat gift card holder for a last minute Christmas gift. So thanks so much for joining me, everyone. And thanks everyone for your orders so far for the 20% off that I'm giving during the month of November. I was swamped with orders yesterday, so I thank everyone. Have a good remainder of the week, everyone. Thanks for joining me.